Gibbs Gardens in North Georgia. This is a garden that was constructed by a landscape company, but they brought in different pieces of culture from different parts of the world. This is the Japanese garden, and we're going to talk today about diffusion and how culture spreads to other places. I'm Mr. Coulter, and this is Human Geography. Today we're going to learn about the different types of diffusion in 3.4. So diffusion is the spread of culture. When it originates from a place, the place is called the cultural hearth. So where cultural traits originate are known as the cultural hearth. They diffuse out, they spread out of the cultural hearth. Our two main types of diffusion are relocation and expansion diffusion. So we'll get into each of those now. So relocation diffusion is the spread of an idea through the physical movement from one place to another. So relocation diffusion is the spread of an idea through physical movement of people from one place to another. So this is not where more people take on a trait, it's the same people move with their trait or family to a new place. And when they go there, they continue to practice that cultural trait. So we can see here that immigration plays a major part in relocation diffusion because someone immigrates from one country to another and they take the cultural trait with them. A great example of this is Hinduism being practiced outside of India. We learned last week that Hinduism is an ethnic religion, which means it is tied specifically to place. And because of that, when Indian people who practice Hinduism migrate, they bring their faith with them. They are not spreading their faith, they're not converting people to their faith, but they move to a new location with their faith. They continue to do their cultural practices, and no new followers are added. It just moves to a different place. That's why it's relocation diffusion. So Diwali being celebrated at the Hindu temple in Metro Atlanta is a great example of this. People migrated from India. They continue to raise their children in the Hindu faiths, but they are not converting new people to Hinduism, and they celebrate the Festival of Lights. And you can see these are actual pictures from Metro Atlanta. There's two amazing temples if you never get a chance to go visit Hindu temples in Metro Atlanta. So that brings us to expansion diffusion. And expansion diffusion has a couple of different types. But basically, expansion diffusion is cultural diffusion where a trend or fashion spreads to other locations from its hearth. So that means that new people are adopting it. The big difference between expansion and relocation is that in relocation, there are no new adopters to the cultural trait, and in expansion, new people are adopting the trait. So expansion diffusion is where it spreads to new places and new people. There are three types of expansion diffusion. The first one is known as contagious diffusion. Contagious diffusion is the rapid, widespread diffusion of a characteristic throughout the population. So this is like person-to-person contact. Think of a contagion when they talk about a disease. And a disease is not a cultural trait, so that's not an example. But when you think about a disease, it spreads from one person coming in contact with 2 or 3 people. They spread it to those 2 or 3 people. Those 2 or 3 people spread it to someone else, and then it continues on and on and on. It's through person-to-person contact, contagious diffusion. And you can see here that innovation is spreading outward through direct contact. It's not jumping out to further people. It starts at its origin and it goes one-to-one outward. I think one of the best examples of this is gossip. Gossip is a good example of contagious diffusion. One person tells 3 people the same piece of gossip. So let's say I tell a couple of people in my class that we may get canceled for snow the next day. Those people are going to quickly tell at least 2 more people that a teacher thinks school is going to get canceled for snow. Soon 10 people know it, and then everyone in the group knows that gossip. It'll go around school that Mr. Coulter thinks that we are going to get canceled for snow. So let's look at a chart of this. This is the original gossip. This is Kermit the Frog sipping tea, minding his business. And then you can see that it goes out to second level gossip and then on to the late gossip. And Nick Offerman with popcorn loves it. All right, the next type is hierarchical diffusion. Hierarchical diffusion is another type of expansion diffusion, so it's like contagious diffusion, but it's a little different. Hierarchical is the spread of an idea from persons or nodes of authority or power to other persons or places. So instead of it being one-to-one, where contagious diffusion, you're talking to two people and spreading that thing to two people, this is where someone in a position of power or a city that's ranked above other cities spreads it far away to something else, and then it trickles down to people under them. So it is someone of an important stature spreads it to someone else of an important stature, and then it trickles down. And this works with places as well. So the innovation spreads from one power node to another. It jumps over other areas and other people, and then eventually spreads out and down. But it's not person-to-person contact in the same way that contagious is. So a great example of this is fashion. Fashion is typically hierarchical diffusion. We can also do the same thing with like technology. But fashion typically originates in a major fashion hub like Milan or Paris. It skips over these less dense areas or these less high-end fashion areas and jumps to other major pop culture cities, eventually diffusing to smaller cities, and then rural areas are typically the last to get on board with the trend. So like we see here, we've got either Paris or Milan, fashion starts. That jumps out to London, it jumps to New York, and then it jumps to Tokyo. From New York, it then goes to LA, Mexico City, South America, any big cities like Rio, and then eventually down to suburbs, and then eventually out to everyone. But it jumps over areas to more important areas and then trickles down from there. This also works with things like in government, the different rankings of people. If a governor says something about public education, it then goes to the superintendents of the schools, who then disseminate it out to the principals, who then tell teachers. It skips over the people in between, and it goes straight to higher up people in the hierarchy. That is hierarchical diffusion. And then our last type of expansion diffusion is known as stimulus diffusion. Stimulus diffusion is the spread of a principle of a characteristic, but not the entire characteristic. So it's pieces of something spread, but the whole thing does not spread. So pieces of it spread, but the whole thing doesn't spread. I think about this a lot with innovative college football offenses, where the hurry up, no huddle offense is a piece of a bigger offense. And then that has become popularized, and a lot of people have taken the hurry up, no huddle, but they don't take all of those original pieces of the air raid offense or the run pass option. They just keep that. We also have a few different examples of this. Christmas is a great example. So the birth of Jesus was something that was celebrating Christianity, but they're not exactly sure what the date was that they celebrate. So the Romans took on a pagan festival, which was on December 25th, and they used the thing of Christmas trees, of bringing trees inside was a pagan thing, and they incorporated all of that together in order to attract the pagans into the Christian holiday. So Christmas moved its date to better accommodate the people, to get people hooked onto Christianity in ancient Rome. McDonald's is another example. McDonald's was created and famous for its cheeseburgers. It was famous and created for its cheeseburgers, but it spread to over 100 countries around the world. Although they're famous for burgers, other countries adapt the menu to their local cultural preferences. And we found out in an earlier topic of this unit that eating cow in India is a food taboo. So they still have McDonald's in India, but their McDonald's serve veggie burgers. So you can see the McVeggie right there is in the top left. We also see a chicken sandwich, different things like that. They adopt the same menu style, the same look of a McDonald's, the same brand, but instead of it being a cow burger, McDonald's in India serve veggie or chicken options. The idea of bringing a tree inside and decorating it is also a pagan tradition that was adopted for Christmas. So diffusion is a quick topic, but an extremely important one. We're going to get into specific cultural traits that have diffused around the world as we go on in this unit, but it's really important that we remember that there are two main types of diffusion. Relocation diffusion, where something moves but doesn't add any new followers or practitioners of the trait, and then expansion diffusion, where new people are adopting the cultural trait. They're adding it to what they do in life. And then as a part of expansion diffusion, we have contagious diffusion, which is quick moving person-to-person contact. Hierarchical diffusion, where a trait goes from important people or places to other important people and places and then trickles down. And stimulus diffusion, where we adopt parts of a trait, but not the entire trait as it spreads around. We'll continue to look at these as we move forward in the class, but understanding the types of diffusion is just one step in our road to better understand our world. I'm Mr. Coulter, and this was Human Geography.